It's heartbreaking that we have food banks in Canada, and it's really heartbreaking to see that people really need them.
Liberal MP and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was on CTV News, where she was asked about the cost of living and asked specifically about an example that she could give to show that she really understands what Canadians are going through. And this response is getting a lot of heat online for just how terrible it is. So to be clear here off the bat, before I get to any of these clips, people come across my videos, assume they know my politics, and then, because I'm criticizing the Liberals, it must mean I'm for Pierre Poilievre, that piece of garbage. No, I am critical of all politicians, regardless of what party they are a part of. My concern is always working class people. Why, or not why, but how can working class people gain more power? Regardless of the country you're in, regardless of anything, you have the working class and you have the capitalists who own everything. We are in a situation right now, not just in Canada, but largely globally, where people up top control everything. And there is very little else for the rest of us to survive. So this response here just goes to how out of touch generally a lot of these politicians are.
Minister, I'm hoping today that we can have a conversation where we get some answers and hear from you personally about how this affordability crisis that we're living in is truly understood. I think Canadians have watched, they listened to press conferences, they've seen the announcements, they watched as the grocery CEOs were paraded in and questioned. But my sense is that people are feeling that the Liberals don't get it, that they aren't feeling the tough choices that Canadians are making either to their budgets or in the grocery store. What example, not an announcement, what example can you share that would illustrate that you understand the pain and the pinch that Canadians are feeling at the grocery store when they're doing budgets? How does it look in the Freeland household when we're in a cost of living crisis?
Well, Anne-Marie, I think the thing that, in my regular life, brings the challenge home the most personally to me is that my church, which is around the corner from my house, just up the street from us here, the Church of the Messiah, has a food bank every Wednesday. And the lines have been getting longer. And that is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that we have food banks in Canada, and it's really heartbreaking to see that people really need them. So I am grateful to the really amazing people at the Church of the Messiah who have worked so hard to have a food bank and to support our community. And it kills me that that's something that they need to do, that we need to do.
Yeah, a national report was released recently that the numbers are up at record numbers. There's people who are employed who are using it to buy things like milk and eggs because it's just expensive.
Yeah, it really kills me that these food banks exist. If only there was somebody in power who could do something about this. This, for me, is so every year, Chrystia Freeland says something ridiculous. I'll get to her, the scandal, or not scandal, but the ridiculous thing she said last year that goes to the same issue. This is the real issue with the response here, and the reason why there was so much pushback and outrage over it is not necessarily identifying that there's a food bank in her area. It's the end of it, where she says this, it kills me that these exist, as if she has no power to do anything about this, as if she has no power to rein in these massive grocery chains and cut down on their profits to benefit the rest of society. I'm going to get to some of the what Liberals have been attempting to do with the grocery chains in a minute here, but it goes to again being out of touch and showing you're out of touch. At the very least, Chrystia Freeland everyone knows she's not struggling. Just start by saying, I don't see this in my everyday life. I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. I recognize, there's a food bank around the corner, and I see the lines getting longer, and we as a government are trying to address this in, this and this way. That would be the proper political response. The Liberals, unfortunately, aren't really doing enough to really try and act like, oh, we're doing all these things to help people. But you would at least avoid the outrage if you answered this in a way that didn't, try and act like this really bothers you. If only somebody could do something about this. I don't know. Maybe the deputy prime minister and the prime minister and the Liberal Party in power could do something. But I want to get to just a couple of reactions online before I get to some more about grocery chains and the other clip from last year from Freeland that feels a lot like this one. But first here, Sammy tweeting out, we desperately need more working class people in government. Absolutely. Kojo here writing, this is why people are losing trust in all levels of government. It kills you that food banks exist in Canada, yet you are the deputy prime minister. What are you going to do to address the issue? Politicians are far removed from the daily struggle of people. Absolutely. Now, food banks, on the point of food banks, they were never meant to be this. And apparently, I've learned recently that food banks are a bigger thing in Canada than in the US. Now, I'm not sure if that's necessarily a direct correlation to people needing food, or just the fact that I'm not going to make assumptions here, but that there is there's more charity in Canada for whatever reason. But this is, as you can see, food banks were created during an economic recession and were designed to be a temporary solution. The first food bank in Canada opened in 1981 in Edmonton during a recession caused by an oil industry bust. 34 years later, food banks are still widely used, and there continues to be a need for them across Canada. It was never meant to be this permanent Band-Aid. It was meant to be a temporary solution to a problem that was happening at the time, and it ended up being something that the government relied on as opposed to doing anything themselves to help people. Now, this gets to the profits. This is a recent headline here from CTV News. Grocery profits set to exceed record in 2023, expert says, ahead of committee meeting. So profits in the Canadian grocery sector will likely exceed $6 billion in 2023, setting a new record as they rise 8% from last year, according to the Centre for Future Work. And the data shows retailers took advantage of the pandemic and its aftermath to increase their profits. Quote, an industry can't double its profits if it is merely passing on higher expenses. So that's, what the industry has been trying to claim. Things are higher for us too, so we're just passing on those expenses. Then why are you making more profit than last year? Clearly, they are benefiting here. And to pretend otherwise is to just lie. It's obvious. This is what the Liberal government, this headline really shows you everything. And on first pass, you may not see much from this, but Minister says he wishes grocers were more forthcoming on plans to stabilize prices. Who's in power here? Government or massive corporations? Like, he's admitting here that these massive grocery chains, they're the ones running the show. Because if the government was in power, they would do something about this. They would be the ones to lay out the plans for them and rein them in. But no, instead, they were summoned. They summoned the heads of these companies, demanding they present a plan. It's like, and the way the Liberals rolled this out, they were acting like, oh, don't worry, everybody, we got this under control. We got this under control. We are going to demand that these CEOs deliver us a plan to address this. Which, obviously, whatever plan they put forward is still going to benefit those massive corporations because it is the plan from the massive corporations. The whole capitalism exists for these companies to make profits. They're not going to do anything that is going to hurt them. This is why government exists, to control this shit. But no, we need these corporations to tell us what to do. It should be the other way around. And it is so embarrassing that this is how they rolled this out, as if this is going to solve anything. Now, this is the video from last year. That it's amazing that she does this every year, but here is the one that sounds eerily similar to what you just heard.
And I think Canadian families are looking really closely at all of their expenses. I personally, as a mother and wife, look carefully at my credit card bill once a month. And last Sunday, I said to the kids, you're older now, you don't want to watch Disney anymore. Let's cut that Disney Plus subscription. So we cut it. It's only $13.99 a month that we're saving, but every little bit helps. And I think every mother in Canada is doing that right now.
There was weeks of media about that comment after that came out because of how absurd this is. First of all, do not pretend that you are struggling. Do not pretend that you really needed that $13 a month back. Also, you're telling Canadians that they have to sacrifice? They're seeing these massive corporations, these millionaires, billionaires, increasing their wealth, but that's okay. They can make increased profits off the backs of the working class while the working class are making less and things are costing more. And you're telling the working class, you're telling everyday people to save. It is just, there is, on both ends, it is just a completely insane thing to try and argue here that people, they just need to cut back on that avocado toast and then they'll have some more money. So there was, a lot of response to this, but this is my favorite from the Beaverton here, satirical news site in Canada. Food banks dissolve after Canadian families find missing $13.99 a month needed to avoid starvation. It's just, and you could, as she is saying this, you can picture the her writing the speech ahead of time and thinking, okay, how am I going to connect with everyday people? Clearly, I am not an everyday Canadian, but how can I connect with them? Okay, people like their subscription service, people like Netflix and Disney Plus. I cut Disney Plus back, and maybe people will relate to that. Like that's. And did she even do that? Really? She probably just canceled it because she realized she wasn't watching it, if she canceled it at all. But, just an aside, Disney Plus is not just Disney films. There's like The Simpsons are on there. It's Always Sunny is on there. It's not just for children. But that goes to, maybe the idea that you never actually opened the app. I don't know. This is just, it is, bottom line, it is a tough time for a lot of people. And the only way that we're really going to see any real changes is if people band together, if the working class band together. This is why unions are a very important piece of pushing back against capitalists, because it is the only way that we can achieve real power, by banding together. Otherwise, you have to rely on Chrystia Freeland or Pierre Poilievre. All of these individuals, and on Pierre Poilievre for a second here, he's somebody who he's really trying hard to pretend he cares about people. And his messaging, if you don't know much about Pierre Poilievre, you may think he has a good message. He's fighting for the working class. But you look at any of the guy's votes, you look at his entire history. He's been in Parliament since he was like 23. You look at his entire history. It is always in support of massive corporations, always in support of the wealthy. He's always voted against unions, always voted against the working class. Yet he's out here trying to pretend he actually cares about people. So don't be fooled here into thinking, oh, liberals are out of touch, conservatives are where it's at. No, they're both completely out of touch, and NDP as well. At least when it comes to, some individuals in leadership and the way leadership generally runs itself aren't too great either. So there really is just be open-minded and aware that real change is not going to come from the top. It's only going to come from the working class.